Coming up next on the Union Label will be a conversation with Bill Hack, retired business manager of Ironworkers Local 782 here in Paducah. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you, Barry. I'm glad to be here with you.
In the past, we talked about your war experiences. Today, we'll talk about your union experiences. And I want to begin by asking you the same question I ask every guest on the Union Label. What did the union movement mean to you personally?
Well, it means a great deal to me, Barry. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. And as a teenager, I worked in the factories up there, and it was under very harsh rules, and they paid very little money. For instance, I run a machine in one shop for 12.5 cents an hour, and I couldn't leave that machine without they would write down what time I went in the bathroom and what time I come out, and they paid me 12.5 cents an hour and worked me 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, and that incensed me to think that something needed to be done about such matters as that. That was back when unions, they didn't hardly know what a union was. But I got involved with the unions when they organized the Ford Motor Company. And as a teenager, I went out there and fought in the picket lines with the police and the strike breakers. And I know what it is to have to fight for decent wages and decent conditions on the job. And I dedicated my life to that purpose.
Now, was that the United Automobile Workers?
It was the UAW and United Automobile Workers. And I worked in the Chrysler plant and helped organize that place. And I was just a teenage kid. I lied about my age and I went to work when I was 16, but I told them I was 18. I had a phony birth certificate. And I'd done all that stuff.
Did you ever get to meet Walter Reuther?
I've seen him, but I didn't personally get to talk with him. But I have been out on the jobs when he was president, and he was my hero. I admired him very much, and I thank God we have men like Walter Reuther, John L. Lewis, and other leaders like that.
Now, as you got a bit older, I believe you told me before you went into World War II, you were in Washington, D.C., working on a rather important project. What was that?
Well, I went to work on the
Pentagon.
I was working on the Pentagon building, and I've been working there for a year. And I was what they call a pile driver. And I got my notice there while I was working there to report for being inducted into the service. And I went down to the headquarters there in Washington, D.C., and I asked them if they'd let me transfer that to Paducah, Kentucky. I said, if I got to fight a war, I want to go with Kentucky men because they know how to fight. And you know, they let me do that. I really wasn't expecting them to be that good to me, but they did. And I came home here, and I run the streets for 30 days, celebrating and having a big time. And in 30 days, they called me to come down on Broadway there at the Guthrie Building, and they loaded me in a bus with 30 other fellows and took us to Evansville, Indiana, and they didn't ask you what you wanted to do or what outfits would you want to be in. They just went down the line and said, you and you go to the Air Force. You and you go to the infantry. And they put me in the infantry, the Air Force. And I didn't want that. I said, they don't fight in the Air Force, and I wanted to go fight. I really did. But while I was in my basic training there, the big shot colonel came in, and he was recruiting gunners for these B-17 flying forts. He said they turning them out faster than they could get crews to man them. And he wanted, see, flight duty is all volunteer. That don't make nobody fly. And I volunteered for that. I jumped on that, and went to gunner school, and within 5 months from going in there, I was over in Europe bombing Germany with the 8th Air Force.
305th Bomb Group, wasn't it?
305th Bomb Group, that's correct.
And
they was pretty famous.
And you survived getting shot down over the English Channel?
Well, yes, sir.
And flew in the Schweinfurt raid, the first one.
On the third mission, it was at Saint Nazaire, France. Submarine pens there, German.
But you later flew in the first Schweinfurt mission,
didn't
you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was on that thing, too. It was, we lost 60 B-17 bombers on that particular mission. And it was really rough. I was fortunate to survive that one, but the one where they really got me was Saint Nazaire on my third mission, and I was wounded 3 times before they finally shot us up so bad that we caught on fire and crash landed out there, and trying to get back to England, and we got about halfway across the channel and had to set it down. It was, top of the wing melted and was caving in, and floated around out there 2 hours and a half. Our rubber rafts, one of them burned up, and the other one was shot full of holes, and so we just had them little Mae West, but we all got together and hung there together till British boat come out and picked us up. We was just fortunate to survive that.
So when you came back to Paducah, is that when you joined the Ironworkers then?
Yeah, I come back to Paducah, but I went back to Washington, D.C. and worked there about a year, and then I come back to Paducah, and Bill Sanders knew about me, and he called me and offered to take me into the Ironworkers. I'd been in what they call the pile drivers, that comes out of the Carpenters Local Union. But he wanted to make a ironworker out of me, and he did, and he made I owe everything I am to him. Bill Sanders took me in under his wing, and eventually I took his place, you know. We got in a lot of trouble, you know, during when the atomic plant was being built, and we revolted against the International Union, and Bill Sanders was the leader of that, and so they kicked him out of the Ironworkers, but they didn't kick me out, but they would. I was just fortunate but eventually I wound up taking Bill Sanders' place as business agent, and it was something I really loved doing.
What makes a good business agent, do you think?
Well, he has to be a pretty unselfish fella. He has to put in a lot of long hours. It's not an 8-hour day job. It's a 24-hour day job. And I was dedicated to that. I wanted to make better conditions for working men, and I was pretty successful at it. And I enjoyed doing what I had. My territory included clear over into southeast Missouri. I went over there as far as Cape Girardeau and Saxton and all that, them towns over there, and then I had 8 counties in Tennessee, and then I went halfway north to East St. Louis, over in Illinois. That was all my territory. it was pretty tough working. Some places wasn't safe for an ironworker business agent to even go into, but I made it, and I enjoyed what I was doing.
Did the ironworkers have an apprenticeship program? Did you go through that?
How
did that work?
We got an excellent program that boys are taken in as apprentices. We've got our own school and welding machines and all that thing. And we've got a permanent instructor there that teaches them boys what they need to know. And it works out real good. I helped organize that, and I'm proud of that fact.
What are some of the projects you worked on? Didn't you tell me you worked on Barkley Dam?
I worked on Barkley Dam, and that was the doggonedest experience I ever had. I was the chief steward over there, and I was noted as a pretty tough fellow. And I had to be in order to survive what I did there. I don't mean to brag on myself, but I made a darn good steward. And they didn't hire nobody, and they didn't fire nobody without they discussed it with me first. And
what makes a good union steward, do you think?
Well, he has to be pretty tough to start with, and I prided myself on the fact that I was. I didn't work one thing. I patrolled that job. When I went to work one morning, I made my rounds to every gang and talked with the other stewards and seen that safety conditions was respected. And I just took care of my men. That was about all I did do.
Mm-hmm. Working on a dam, that's pretty dangerous.
Well, it was dangerous, and I often compared that to going to war. I said, when I take my lunchbox and go over there, I don't know if I'm going to come home tonight or not. And I did. I was injured over there and went to the hospital, and it was six men was killed on Barkley Dam. Mm. And I said, it's just very little difference in this and going to war. And I've done my best to improve the safety conditions. That was one of my strongest points, was to work safely. Mm-hmm. But still, in spite of that, we had 6 men killed on Barkley Dam. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's just something that I'm thankful that working conditions has improved considerable since then. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the things that I fought for all my life, was to make things safe and better pay and better working conditions for the working men.
Mm-hmm. I know another thing that you're very proud of is your role in the Jackson House and the Sanders House. Tell us how that came to be.
Well, that was mostly Mr. Sanders' idea, and when it first started, I was opposed to it. I thought, I just couldn't see how that was going to help the working men and women, which was my primary concern. But after I got in operation, I seen how good it was for these older people and retiring. I began to respect it and want to help with it, which I did. I wound up, when I was elected business agent, I got on the board of directors then, and I really loved what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And I made a lot of good friends there.
Well, it's a unique institution in Paducah that labor operates this thing. You know, you think of apartments as operated by private businesses for profit, and here this is a non-profit organization.
Strictly a non-profit organization, and it's just a lot of satisfaction knowing what we're doing and helping the older people and the retired. We've got a lot of retired construction men there, and that was our primary purpose when we started it, was we had the idea of just having it for the retired union workers, but the government wouldn't let us do that. We had to open it to the general public. We borrowed $4 million to get that started.
Wow.
We put up a little bit of seed money to get it started, and then we got a $4 million loan from the government to build that. But that's why they have so much to say about what goes on there.
Right. What are some of the other projects in the area you worked on that people would recognize? Did you actually work on the Jackson House, build on some of it?
I didn't work on the Jackson House, but I worked on the Sanders building across the street, and quite a bit. At the time the Sanders House was built, I was working somewhere else. I don't remember now just where, but.
Yeah. Well, you know, when I think of ironworkers, I think of fellows that build these really tall buildings and get them and walk around on those steel beams. Did you ever do that?
I've done that most of my life, and I've been crippled up a couple of times. And it's pretty dangerous work. Man needs to be cautious. I've got 2 sons following in my steps as ironworkers, and I worry about them a lot too.
But you know, I've seen historic photographs of them building the skyscrapers in New York, and these fellows are up there sitting on a beam eating lunch.
Yeah.
It looks like 1,000,000 feet up in the air.
Yeah.
So you've done that.
I have done that. I've worked as what they call a connector, and that's a guy that goes up and puts the first bolts into a beam when they send it up. And that's the way.
What's the tallest building you ever worked on? Do you remember?
Well, the tallest I ever worked on wasn't a what you'd call a building. It was a big tower in Evansville, Indiana, and it was 900 feet tall. And I was a connector. I was the man that had to go up and put the first bolt in when they sent up a piece of iron. And that's back when we got in all that trouble here, you know, we got in trouble with the International. And I was running an old country grocery store my grandfather had. And the big grocery stores was about to put us out of business, and got hard up for a little money, so I went to Evansville and got a job working 7 days a week and 10 hours a day on this tower. I couldn't get, it was pretty hard to get men to work something like that. But I was in the hall when the man come in that had just quit, and I went over and asked the business agent if I could take that guy's place. And he looked me up and down, and I'd got kind of fat hanging around that grocery, and he said, "You don't look much like no tower man to me." And I said, "Mister, I can do anything you got." And he let me go out there. And
wow.
That's what I took it from.
So you can't be afraid of heights to do that.
No, you gotta respect it and be awful careful, but which I knew how to handle myself, and I could handle it pretty good.
Well, the fact that you were an air gunner, did that make you less afraid of heights because you had flown in the war?
No, well, it possibly did too, in a way. The heights didn't bother me when I was flying, but the first time they took me up was on a little old 2-seated training plane, and that pilot took me out over the Gulf, and he done everything turn wrong side out. He see if I could take it, and I throwed up all over the place and got sick as a dog. And I thought, my God, if that's going to be like this, I don't believe I can make it.
You might want to go back to the infantry, huh?
But you know, that's the only time. From then on, it didn't bother me.
Wow.
It kind of broke me in, I guess.
Yeah.
But it had no effect on me. That flight duty was pretty rough, though, I'll tell you.
It was. Yeah.
Early in the war, you know, there wasn't even no ground troops over there when I went in 1943. The only thing going was the 8th Air Force, and that's what I was in. And we didn't have like fighter protection, you know. Later on, they got these fighter planes that could go all the way with you, but when I was there, the fighters didn't have the range. They'd take you about where the fight started, and they'd have to run out of gas and have to go back. And then that's when them Germans would jump on you. And they'd stay with you all the way to the target, and then all the way back to where these fighters would come back out and meet us. But man, that was pretty rough stuff. I said I was just a damn fool, because back then, if you made 25 missions, you could come home, which I did. But I come home and I made an instructor out of me down in Florida. Had it made. And I had a crew that was ready to go over. They was going over where I'd been. And one of these boys got sick. I always said that he played sick because he got scared.
Yeah.
And I volunteered to take his place and went back over. And I said, anybody that been over there and knowed what it was and then volunteered to go back, he had to be a damn fool. but that's what I done. I was there when Germany surrendered.
Yeah.
And jokingly, I like to brag that they heard I was back and they surrendered.
There you go. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Well, do you still keep up with Local 782? Do you go to meetings and around them?
I don't attend many, but I do occasionally, and we have a meeting with the retired members. Once every 3 months. We have a get-together of old timers that's retired, and I enjoy that quite a bit.
Are there a lot of fathers and sons in the unit? Is that a tradition?
There's quite a bit of that. It sure is. That's my son right over there. He's made a good iron worker. I'm proud of him. He's done great.
Excuse me. What, in your opinion, makes a good iron worker?
Well, he has to be willing to work, because it ain't no job for what I'd call a cream puff or something. It's pretty tough work.
Can't be afraid of heights, right?
But no, that's true too. But we do have one branch of the iron workers that, like the rod busters, they call them. You know, what put in the rebar and the concrete pours. And that's not considered dangerous whatsoever. But the structural steel, when that building goes up, that's where the danger is. And especially dangerous like on bridge work. And I've built several bridges and powerhouses.
Any bridges around here you worked on?
Yeah, I worked on that bridge right here in Paducah. That new bridge goes over the metropolis.
The Interstate 24 bridge?
I worked on that, and I worked on a railroad bridge at Cairo, but I've worked on other bridges in other parts of the country. I've worked powerhouses and bridges and things all over the country, you might say. I worked a lot. Worked the whole year in Chicago one time, and I had a job that none of their people would do. Me and my cousin, we had to build it was for a bridge across the Chicago River, and we had to put the foundation in, and They have to drive sheet piling and pump the water out.
Yeah, coffer dam. Yeah.
And get in there and bust the, and it's surprising that just a few foot down in Chicago, it's solid rock. And we had to get down in that hole with the jackhammers. And the laborers wouldn't do it. And me and my cousin got down there and done that too.
Wow.
But we made a pot full of money on it. But,
well, when you drive across the I-24 bridge, going to Marion to the VA hospital, do you think about that you actually physically built that bridge?
Well, the thought runs through your mind every now and then. You can remember incidents and things that happened along here. It's always there.
Well, I would think, you know, that'd be a real point of pride. You know, you could say that I actually physically built this, and well, and the tower there. What kind of tower was that in Evansville, you said?
It was a temporary tower. Eventually they took it down. It was just a TV tower, more or less, for television purposes. But they only kept it up a few years and took it down. Then they had a better system some way or another to handle it. I was working on it, just about had it completed. And me and my wife was running this old grocery store, country grocery store, and she called me and said I just locked that darn grocery and threw the keys out in the street. You better be home on the next bus. And sure enough, I was there.
Yeah.
But we wound up moving to Detroit, Michigan, because work was just nothing here.
Yeah.
We went up there and stayed a year and then come back home.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's the life of an iron worker. You don't know where you're going to be next week.
Yeah.
They don't have to do that nowadays. They pay so much unemployed that it don't pay men to go off and work somewhere else, you know. But back then, unemployed was just about $30 a month, and you couldn't live on that. So if you got out of work, iron worker generally had to start looking where place he could go and go to work.
Yeah.
Sometimes I had friends in Detroit and Chicago that I could call and ask them how the work was. And if they say, yeah, that's pretty good, come on up. And if they said, no, you better not come here, we ain't got nothing. You had to have connections to survive in that kind of business.
Well, I'm sorry to say we're out of time,
Well,
but I enjoyed it thoroughly. Maybe you can come back again and we can talk some more. How would that be?
Well, I always enjoy talking with you, Barry.
And I do enjoy talking to you.
I'm proud of my friendship with you.
And I'm proud of my friendship with you. Thank you very much for coming. I'm Barry Craig. Please join us next time.